Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to take a closer look at the new Canon EOS M5 mirrorless body. This is now the third of the Canon M series that I have reviewed, and starting with the original EOS M, and then I have reviewed and actually owned the EOS M3 as well, and I recently sold that in anticipation of the M5 or some alternative. And so now looking at the M5, there certainly has been some growth in the series and over time, and we started off with the original M body, which as you can see was quite a bit more compact and lighter. It was under 300 grams. The M3 grew a fair bit, and of course the M5 has grown even more so. Now, the difference between the M3 and the M5 isn't as significant. Weight is up, and overall physical dimensions are up as well. However, I temper that by noting that the new M5 has the integrated EVF in it. Whereas with the M3, if you added on, as I did often, the accessory of the DC-1 EVF for it, electronic viewfinder, of course that would stick up on top of the camera body, and it occupied the hot shoe, and so it added on physical bulk to the camera. And so the reality is that while the M5 is a little bit bigger, if you happen to use an EVF with the M3, you're actually ending up with a more compact package. I will note, however, that one thing that a lot of people really liked about the original M is that it was a very, very pocketable camera. Really, with the 22mm f2 attached, it really wasn't any bigger than a lot of the little compact point and shoots. And so a lot of people liked the fact that you could get some pretty fantastic image quality with a camera that you literally could put in your pocket. I don't know that the M5 is quite as pocketable in that sense any longer. It's definitely thicker across and has a more complex shape that doesn't necessarily just slip into a jacket pocket in the same way. But in terms of being a real functional camera, there's no question that the M5 is the most highly evolved of this series when it comes to the functionality. I was actually shocked. When I moved to the M3, I moved the EOS M to my son, who was I think 12 at the time. He's about to turn 14, and it's been his primary camera, and so it's still around and still takes great pictures. But I was actually pretty shocked when I went and looked at it today, not having looked at it for a while, and realized how sparse the overall physical controls were. And there's a very simplistic selector for basically switching between automatic, and then just all other modes, other shooting modes for stills was under one setting, and then there was a video setting. There was a little tiny on and off button, a video record button, and then just 3 buttons on the back along with the wheel and the Q button. By contrast, now the M5 really has about as many rotary wheels on it as what the original M had buttons. And now it has got a fully developed, fully functional mode selector dial that really looks, if you're shooting with any other Canon DSLR, it will look very similar to that, and it's loaded with more modes than have ever been available on an M series bodies before. On top of that, of course, it has the dial that goes around the actual shutter mechanism, which is something that I certainly really missed with the original M, because in that mode where that dial is for selecting aperture or shutter speed, on the original M, that was actually the mode selector. And so if you because you're so programmed to doing that with another Canon body, if you rotated that, you would actually rotate yourself out of the existing mode. I find that the texture on this, it just feels better, more pronounced than what it was on the M3. And then the M3 added on aperture compensation wheel, which is really handy to have, giving that physical control. And now there is a third dial. It's a function dial that will allow you to select a number of different functions to assign to it. And you can just click on the button in the center and then rotate the dial to choose different settings right there. It's just one other way to access physical functionality. And really, Canon has managed to load a lot of external controls onto the top of this camera. And I think that they've done it in a way that works ergonomically. There's nothing that feels too crammed in here, but all of it has the appropriate amount of real estate. One thing that has, or I should say another thing that has changed, is that on the M3, it had integrated a flash, but the flash is over on the left side and was raised over here. Now, because of the integrated EVF, we're going to a kind of a more traditional DSLR type center column, where now the flash is integrated there, much like the Rebel series or the XXD series. And so you now have a flash. One thing I will note that is maybe a bit of a disadvantage compared to the M3 is that the M3, it has a smaller flash and less of a guide rating, but it was on kind of a flexible arm to where if you put a little pressure on it, you could actually fire it up and do a little bit of bounce flash. This is a more traditional kind of DSLR-like, pop-up flash. So it gets it up, maybe a hair higher, but at the same time, it's in a fixed position to where you can't rotate that up to do any kind of bounce flashing. But as far as the actual positioning of it, it's a more traditional and thus I think more ergonomically superior integration of the actual flash mechanism. Over on the left side of the front is a different shaped and a little bit more functional, I think, lens release button for when you want to actually mount or actually unmount a lens. I think the big physical seller when it comes to the design here is the integrated EVF. And I had some concerns about this implementation because spec-wise it looks on paper to be quite similar to the DC-1. And I found the DC-1 to be fine, except when trying to use a telephoto lens, either through the EF adapter or the EFM native mount 55 to 200 lens that I own. And that lens it's optically, it's great, but I didn't always enjoy using it because I found that the EVF refresh rate really wasn't quite fast enough to keep up with it. And so trying to track movement, even if it's just trying to isolate, say, a bird and a tree, I just found that it wasn't a fantastic experience. Fortunately, while the overall resolution specs are the same, which by the way, they're the same as the viewfinder also in the new Sony a6500. And so resolution is similar and it looks good. It's still, to me, it's not quite as crisp as what an actual optical viewfinder is, but it's fairly close. And now the refresh rate is good enough to where it doesn't feel like there's any lag. And so I find using telephoto focal lengths to be a little more ergonomically friendly than and a little more functional than what they were on the M3. But this is a great viewfinder, and if you're going to shoot manual focus glass at all, and I find that mirrorless is one of the platforms are probably the best way to use a vintage glass, and I've got some old lenses that I really love. And so this makes it really simple for a number of reasons with that EVF. First of all, it shows you true depth of field, like what I achieve on I have a Canon 6D body with an EGS matte precision focus screen that shows you true depth of field. It makes it much more intuitive to just see when something comes in focus. Your typical focus screen on your DSLR, it doesn't really show you accurate depth of field in that way. And so even if something looks to be in focus, it may not actually be because it's not showing true depth of field in the same way. So the EVF, it makes it easy to see true depth of field, but there's some advantages. Unlike a traditional optical viewfinder, it allows you to have a focus peaking here. And so you can select to turn on focus peaking, and thus you can see, there's several different colors to choose from, and so you can see a color overlay on the edges of whatever happens to be in focus. So that helps some, although, to be honest, I'm not necessarily crazy about focus peaking. I find that it's still not accurate enough in a lot of settings. But what I really do like is the easy ability here to just click a back button and then to be able to magnify up to 10 times the image in the viewfinder, which of course makes it very, very easy to see very accurate focus right down to the eyelash. And so it makes it very easy and I think a nicely intuitive way to use manual focus glass. So that's certainly an advantage of the integrated EVF as well. Works really well once you put your eye right up to it. It will switch automatically between the LCD screen and the viewfinder, and so that's also nice. A lot of information can be overlaid there, and you have some ability to customize what information you can show inside of there. Not like what the 5D Mark IV has, but certainly some options that you can put in there. Another thing that I think is really fantastic that's been incorporated into this for the first time is what they call the touch and grab autofocus, which basically, to cut through the marketing lingo, it simply means that while you're looking through the viewfinder, you can actually use a thumb or a finger and you can move around on the LCD screen and select focus points. Now, when I first enabled this, I enabled it for the whole screen, and I didn't like it at all because my nose, got a long sharp nose here, it tended to hit the LCD screen, and so it would move the selection point to wherever my nose was touching. But you also have options to divide up the screen, and I found that when I map that to the right side of the LCD screen, it becomes just a fantastic way, very intuitive way to move your focus point around, select that focus point. And so that combined with the ability to magnify the image in the viewfinder, it really, really makes not just focus easier, but manual focus to be really a joy. But also, when you're here looking through the EVF, to be able to move that focus point around, it just makes the whole process more organic. And I'm enjoying shooting with the M5 more than what I have with the M series ever before. The overall dial on the back, it feels pretty familiar, but I do think it's maybe a hair more precise than what it was previously. And of course, Canon's touchscreens are really great. It's a joy to use the touchscreen. Now, because of the integrated EVF, on the M3, the screen could be tilted and ultimately it could be rotated and faced right up over the top, kind of what you might call selfie mode. Obviously, having the viewfinder in the way has changed that reality. And so now it is designed to where, and of course I've got a quick release plate on here, it's designed to where it can be tilt down on the bottom. A lot of people are finding that to be an inferior position. If you've got as I've got a quick release plate on here, or if you've got it mounted on a tripod or even a selfie stick, that's going to come down and obscure part of the, even if it's not sticking in the way like my quick release plate is here, and you can rotate that down, a big part of your screen is going to be obscured by whatever is there. One solution around that is that you might want to use a, kind of a 2-camera mount bar and then just have your mount over here and have that out on the bar to where you can flip that down and use it. The other alternative, of course, is that through the Canon app, you can remotely monitor through by using your phone. And this has a full connectivity built into it, NFC, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and so it's a very modern camera in the sense of the connectivity. Now, if we look at the buttons on the sides and the ports on the right side, which is integrated into the grip. And by the way, the grip has evolved on the series to where now it feels good. It's going to be much easier to use bigger lenses with this camera. I was reminded of how tiny this excuse for a grip was. And so with the original M, you ended up just kind of pinching the camera, not really gripping it because it was just too narrow. And there was just this little nub that gave you a little bit of a finger hold. But now we have a fully evolved grip that really is, it's still smallish and, small for my, medium to large size hands. But, it feels fine and it feels very secure to hang on to it. And they've really worked at building up the thumb grip in the back. And so now you have a very tight hold on there, which is great. But built into that, battery compartment is there along with the just one single SD card. That's still the options. but there is a button here for just being able to physically quickly turn on and off Wi-Fi functionality, which is nice. I kind of wish something like that was, built into the 5D Mark IV. And then there's also a port here for HDMI out. It is HDMI mini port obviously coming out of here. Over on the left side there is a single port, and so here built into it you have got a microphone in, which is of course obviously very nice to have. A lot of people are going to want to use this for video or vlogging. There is a USB port coming out of there. It's a micro USB port, USB 2.0. And then finally, there is a port for a remote shutter release. Your need for a remote shutter release is kind of less and less these days because of having a lot more functionality built into these, ability to do time-lapse built in, and able to remotely trigger via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, NFC, whatever. And so, but it's good that it's still there. The one thing, of course, that isn't there is a headphone monitoring port. And so overall, that's one of the things that has not yet made it into the M series. Now, in a future episode, we'll start to look at the overall image quality. It's got a 24.2 megapixel sensor, which is the same as the M3, also the same as the 80D. By the way, it's also the same sensor size as the Sony a6300 or a6500, though the Sony crop factor is different. Sony crop factor is 1.5 times, Canon's is 1.6 times. And so that has both pros and cons on its impact for real-world shooting, but that's for another time in another place. But obviously, big highlight upgrade here is, having Canon's DPAF like the Canon 80D. It also has a higher maximum ISO rating than both the M3, which capped out at 12,800, and even then the Canon 80D, which capped out at ISO 16,000. And so this goes all the way up to ISO 25,600. And so I'll be looking to see if that is a warranted increase and if it actually is better than what the 80D sensor in low light performance. One other physical thing that I will note as a part of this before I go is that they have redesigned the lugs for attaching a camera strap to it. Now, as far as the actual attachment rate, the original M, that was a real sore spot for me. It seemed like a nice intuitive system, a little bit with little locks, making it easy to come on and off. The problem is that I was never able to trust it. Those would unlock on their own, and all of a sudden, one side of the camera strap would be unattached. On the M3, they moved to more of the traditional, kind of like DSLR, just slot lugs on the side that you can attach traditional accessories to. Here they've gone to a small kind of metal eye hole type lug on either side, and they've got a completely different connection system for the existing strap. That's fine, and it does work quite well if you're going to use the existing strap or the included strap for it. I tend to really use a lot of third-party type straps that are more comfortable, better for using in a sling position, etc., etc. And of course, this new design makes a lot of their connection points incompatible. So I'm actually not crazy about that personally, even if it does work better, I think, overall with the actual included strap in terms of the logic of attaching it and disconnecting it fairly quickly. It's got great autofocus now, which I've never been able to say of the M series before. It's got a fast burst rate now, which is not quite up to the level of the a6300 or the a6500, but it trounces anything that Canon has had in mirrorless before. And on top of that, it has a better, I think, overall tracking focus system than what Sony has been able to achieve yet. The Canon's DPAF is just fantastic, and it's at the top of the heap when it comes to that technology, and it's really great to finally get that into a mirrorless body. So keep an eye out for my ongoing coverage of the M5. If you look down below, I've got a gallery of images have taken of the camera, and then also that I'm taking with the camera, and I'm shooting, with a variety of native EFM mount lenses. I'm shooting with some EF lenses via adapter, and then I'm also shooting with some vintage kind of legacy glass via adapter here also, and you'll see a lot of different photos there included. On top of that, there is a link to purchase the camera if you're interested in getting one for yourself. And of course, you can follow me on social media, sign up for my newsletter, visit my website, do any of those things. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.